My name is Emily. I am a 29-year-old nurse. I have a somewhat troublesome family. This family consists of my sister Erin, who turned 30 this year, and my mother, who is close to Erin. Despite being adults, they both seem to do nothing but play around. Emily, do you go to work every day? If you're not devoted to marriage hunting like me, you'll end up left alone. When I come home from work, my sister, seeing my tired face, says this to me. You can't save money if you don't go to work every day. What are you talking about? Dad is here too, so it's fine. My sister is a part-timer, working about 3 days a week at an apparel shop. And all her earnings seem to go on nails and fashion. However, she buys more than her part-time job can afford. So at those times, she takes my mother shopping with her. My mother is always soft on my sister, so she buys her everything. Literally, anything. My mother is a housewife, but since my father is an executive at a certain company, we have a decent income. Therefore, whenever my sister Erin says, "Buy this," my mother immediately purchases it with my father's money. I was never the kind of child who demanded everything. So I hardly ever asked my mother for anything. But my mother seems to have grown to prefer my sister, who is more demanding than me. Since I was too quiet, my mother says it's creepy to have such a quiet child. And a child who can't ask for things at times like this won't be able to get ahead in life. Now that I've grown up, I became a nurse, which is what I always wanted to do. And I work hard every day. However, my sister, who has developed a habit of being pampered, still lives at home, not moving out, doing her part-time job 3 days a week, and spending her time as she likes without contributing to household expenses. Both my sister and mother think everything is fine as long as my father is around. Seeing my sister insist that it's fine, I sighed. I think it's not good to rely only on Dad. You are older than me, sister. It's about time you learn to live on your own. In fact, I have been confided in by my father about a certain matter. That is, he has terminal cancer. He shared this with me, as I am a nurse. When I learned the fact that my beloved father had terminal cancer, everything went dark before my eyes, but I decided to properly support him. At that time, my father said he didn't want to tell my mother and sister about his illness. I didn't understand my father's thinking, but I accepted it, since that's what he wanted. Since it's not a distant future that my father will be gone, I wanted my sister to stand on her own feet. But there's no way she would leave the house because of my words. What's that? Why don't you leave this house instead? Just because Dad allows it, you're always hanging around at home. That's because I'm worried about Dad. I am anxious about what might happen to my father at any time. I came back home for the times of emergency. I came back for my father's sake, not to hang around at home like my sister. However, my sister and mother, who do not know about my father's illness, seem to think I came back to my parents' house because I'm lonely for being single and not having a boyfriend. Yes. Keep flattering Dad then. But you know, right? I've always been better at flattering than you. There's nothing left for you. My sister said this with a smile. Nothing left. It's none of your business, so you can forget it. As my sister's stories are always absurd, I ignored her this time. Perhaps it was for the best that I didn't delve deeper into her and my mother's thoughts at this moment. If I had, I might have gotten so angry that I would have driven them out of the house, making things even more complicated. I only realized what they were thinking when my father finally passed away, and we were holding his funeral. As I was wiping my tears with a handkerchief and attending the funeral, I noticed that my mother and sister had disappeared. Wondering where they could be, I found them outside the funeral venue. Thinking they were alone, they started talking. Now that Dad is gone, his inheritance will come to us. I can't believe we're getting $1,380,000. It's like a dream. Yes, Aaron. Let's splurge together from now on. First, shall we move into that tower mansion your boyfriend mentioned? That sounds like a good idea. Sure. I told my boyfriend I could get the money ready right away. Let's go see a high-rise condo tomorrow. I was frozen and went back inside without saying a word to my mother and sister. On this important day of my father's funeral. To hear them talking about his inheritance and what they would do with it, I was appalled. Though I never really liked my sister or mother, I turned a blind eye because they were family. But this, I couldn't forgive. My father had worked hard to earn money for our family. And he never complained about their spending. And now that he was gone, they didn't shed a single tear. I felt deep anger towards my sister and mother. But there was no need for me to act. My mother and sister were heading towards their own downfall. After the funeral, I took care of the procedures while my mother and sister were out almost every day. While I was sorting out my father's belongings, a drunk mother and sister returned. Why is Emily here in the middle of the day? I get it. You've been fired, haven't you? You've never been good at getting by in the world, have you? In contrast, Aaron is really good at it. I made sure to promise your father to give all the inheritance to Aaron. And she has got a wonderful boyfriend now. We're going to live in a high-rise condo from now on. My mother bragged as if it were her own achievement. I wonder if it was the high-rise condo that was mentioned when they sneaked out the funeral and were talking together. My mother is a housewife, and my sister only works 3 days a week. How could they think of buying a high-rise condo? I doubt they could even pass the loan screening. Perhaps my sister's boyfriend will do something about it. While my sister and mother were energetic, I was exhausted from the grief of losing my father and the continuous procedures and cleaning. I wasn't fired, I was on bereavement leave. But I didn't have the energy to point this out to my sister and mother, who were high on alcohol. You won't get a single dollar from the inheritance? Serves you right. My sister said this, but I just ignored her, thinking, oh, really? I don't care about inheritance. I'm just so sad that my beloved father is gone. I'm not yet over my father's death to be happy about discussing his inheritance. Seeing me, my sister contemptuously said, a jobless person without a boyfriend is just pathetic. I don't ever want to be like you. Indeed, my sister and I will probably never understand each other. This incident made me dislike her even more. And I doubt she or my mother ever really cared for me. I don't want to be like you either, sister. I found myself saying those words unintentionally. Hearing this, my sister Erin and my mother glared at me, their faces reddened with alcohol. How dare you speak to your sister like that? You really are a terrible sister. I shouldn't have thought of another child after Erin. It seems my mother wishes she never had me. Knowing that my own mother dislikes me really hurts. But then, Erin added insult to injury. Are you hurt by that? Too bad. No one cares about a boring person like you. You'll spend your whole life without comfort. What a lonely life. As a NET, no man will ever look your way. And you, sister, seem like you can't do anything without a man. Now that dad is gone, can you really manage to live properly? Wah. Of course I can. Don't be so cheeky, you NET. Unlike you, I'm popular with men, so I'll never struggle in life. I was taken aback by my sister's words. My mother, too, seemed to have never worked, always relying on my father's earnings. It's likely that if my sister ever gets married, she'll end up completely dependent on her husband, just like our mother. I felt sorry for any man who would have to take care of my sister. Well, if that's what you think, good luck with that. My mother laughed at my words, apparently thinking they were just bravado. stop putting on airs, will you? But it's too late for an apology now. You've insulted Aaron too much. I no longer consider you part of this family. Pack your things and leave right now." Hearing this, my sister, who had been angry at my words, now smirked at me along with my mother. "Actually, we don't need this house. So, we've decided to sell it and move. We've even contracted a 55th floor apartment in a high-rise condo. So, you, the NET, need to get out." I sighed. "How can you and Mom do such things? You've lived as you pleased all this time. It was only tolerated because Dad was here. How can you not be thankful, or even sad, when Dad passed away?" My words left my mother and sister speechless. "But, you know, Dad told me to work, right? Even without working, Dad's money was enough for us to live well." Aaron must be talking about Dad's inheritance. She thought our father had a lot of money and was always after it, probably nagging him for it. However, unlike my mother and sister, my father did not have a habit of spending extravagantly. My father always said, "Buy your own things." So he probably didn't give in to my sister's requests for money. Instead, my sister manipulated our mother to get her to buy whatever she wanted. Perhaps my sister found our father bothersome because he didn't pamper her. What my sister truly valued wasn't our father, but the money he had. My mother, too, favored Aaron the most. So it's likely she valued my father's money more than him. Unlike my father, who treated me fairly, they preferred his wealth. I cannot let these people inherit what my father worked so hard to build. They contracted a 55th floor apartment in a high-rise condo right after Dad's death. Came home reeking of alcohol and didn't even help with sorting his belongings. They surely deserve some kind of divine punishment. Since Dad is no longer here, I'm leaving this house anyway. But, sister and Mom, you should be prepared. Huh? Prepared for what? You seem to have forgotten, but today, a lawyer is coming to our house to tell us about Dad's will. Believing they would inherit Dad's estate, my mother and sister's eyes lit up. They started fussing, touching up their makeup, and waiting for the lawyer. I was astonished at their need to freshen up their makeup in such a situation. When the lawyer arrived, my sister and mother rushed to greet him. Something they usually make me do, and led him to the living room. They even served tea themselves, smiling pleasantly the entire time. The lawyer seemed confused by my somber expression and their apparent joy. As the lawyer was about to discuss the will, my mother and sister leaned forward eagerly. "Are we getting the full $1,380,000? We're selling this house too, so we'll get more money, right? There's nothing for the younger sister, right? The inheritance is all mine, right? As the older sister, or it's between me and my mother?" The lawyer, visibly perplexed, stated clearly, "There is no inheritance for you two." What? Both my mother and sister were stunned, making the same frozen expression. According to the will, all the inheritance is to be passed to Emily, the younger daughter. What? That's a lie. I made a promise with Dad. He nodded when I said to give me all the inheritance. So, it's all mine. Not Emily's. My sister stood up, pointing at me in anger. But no matter how upset she gets, it won't change the contents of the will. The lawyer, after listening to her, spoke firmly. "Is that a verbal promise? This is a will and it's legally binding, but verbal promises are not." "What? You're kidding, right?" My sister collapsed on the spot. My mother must have believed my sister's claim about securing the inheritance from our father. She turned pale. But then, she glared at me. "What kind of a way did you use to flatter your dad? Even if we didn't get all of it, Aaron and I should have received some of the inheritance. It's absurd that only you get everything." My sister joined in, glaring at me too. "Exactly. You must have used some illegal method. You threatened Dad into writing that will. I can't forgive you for this. I sighed deeply. It wasn't me threatening Dad that led him to leave the inheritance solely to me, but my sister's actions. I had heard my father say he wouldn't leave his estate to my sister and mother. My sister had even demanded that he leave the inheritance only to her. She insisted that if not solely to her, then at least to her and our mother. They both wanted to ensure that I wouldn't receive any part of the inheritance. But that's when my father decided. Unlike them, who showed no concern for him and were only interested in his money, he wanted to leave his estate to me, who cared for him and reluctantly returned to a home I didn't want to come back to. Dad decided not to leave the inheritance to you too because you neglected him. Can't you understand that? But, Emily, can you really handle such a large sum of $1,380,000 all by yourself? Managing such a huge amount alone is dangerous. As your mother, I should manage half of it for you. Seeing my mother trying to cozy up for the money, I felt a chill. My mother, who had always thoroughly disliked me, suddenly approached me with a soft tone. I instinctively distanced myself from my sister and mother. When I said, "Don't come any closer," both my sister and mother listened quietly. They had turned even paler when the lawyer told them that this house would also belong to me. After the lawyer left, I quickly packed my things. Well, you two have the apartment in a high-rise condo, right? I'll be selling this house soon, so you'll need to leave, I said before rushing out ahead of them. I just returned to the apartment I had rented for living alone. However, I haven't told my mother and sister where I live, so they probably don't know my whereabouts. Soon after, my sister called me, crying. "Help me, Emily. I've been deceived." Deceived? My boyfriend, John, tricked me. He said there's an available room on the 55th floor of a high-rise condo, and if I could give him $34,500 immediately, he'd agree to sell it. Just hearing a bit of her story, I was exasperated. So this was what she meant by buying the apartment. I was appalled as my sister continued her story of divine retribution. John said he wanted to live in that high-rise condo room once we're married. He really wanted to buy it, but he said he couldn't prepare the money right now. Since I was about to receive $1,380,000 as inheritance, I agreed to pay and gave him $34,500. Where did you get that $34,500 from? My sister works part-time 3 days a week but spends all the money she earns. Naturally, she wouldn't have had $34,500 in savings. I borrowed it, thinking I could pay it back soon. For my sister to borrow $34,500 so quickly, she must have gone to a dangerous place with no proper vetting. It's suspicious for her boyfriend to suddenly ask for $34,500 and following this pattern. He's likely a scam artist who conned my sister and disappeared with the money. I don't know what happened, but I'm busy. You have to leave that house within a week. If you stay any longer, I'll call the police, I said and hung up. After blocking my sister and mother's contact, they stopped reaching out, perhaps unable to even pay their phone bills. From what I heard through mutual acquaintances, my sister indeed got scammed. The scam artist was apparently caught, but the $34,500 my sister gave him was all spent. Naturally, my sister, now terrified of growing interest and debt collectors, started a live-in job with my mother. Hopefully, this will make her realize the hardships of working. I was able to distance myself from my sister and mother and received the inheritance. But I have decided to use it only when truly necessary and continue working diligently.